Hello Year 5 and 6, and this is Monday the 15th of June and we are on week 8, lesson 6 of our narrative unit, The Viewer. Okay, so what we're going to do today is you are going to identify the key events in the text, and then you are going to express your thoughts on the text, giving a personal response. Now, remembering that our main outcome is to retell the story as a different character. What we're going to do today is we are going to listen to the whole of the story and you're going to make notes on the key events. So first of all, you need to copy down this chart on a piece of paper because this will help you to identify the key events. Now down the side I've got some question prompts. So in the beginning, what happens at the beginning? Who are the main characters? Where is it set? So you want that information there. The build up, what happens next? How does the story hint at a problem? You know, that something unusual might be happening. And then the problem, so what is the problem within the story? The resolution, so is the problem resolved or sorted out? And then the ending, how does the story end? Does it end happily? Is there a twist to the plot? Okay, so these will help us identify the key events within the story. So if you would like to just pause the video on this page to give you a chance to copy this down. Okay, so I'm going to read the whole book to you now. Okay, so you can pause it so you can have a good look at some of the pictures because there's lots of pictures in here that are very, very interesting. Or you can pause it, read it through yourself and then press play, skip it forward a bit, however you want to. I'm going to read it through anyway, so if you want to follow, that is fine. So we've got the front page. You've had a look at this picture in a previous lesson. Tristan, a very curious young boy. Okay, Tristan was curious from birth. This is not to say that he was different from other babies. In fact, he was rather ordinary. But from the moment he opened his eyes, he seemed to be looking, taking the world in, as it were. Nor did this remarkable curiosity, this constant need to search, to look out, lessen as he grew older. From the time he was 3 years old, Tristan would wander from his parents' house to be found hours later, miles away and always alone, staring up at a cloudless sky, or crouched by the seashore, peering at some long dead life form that had been washed up there. Or once in a city park, gathering the autumn leaves that lay scattered about him. Another time, on an occasion when he vanished overnight, he was found in a museum, gazing into a display case of long outdated cameras, oblivious of all else, even of the heartache that he had caused his parents. But as he grew older and entered his teenage years, it was the city dump that attracted Tristan most. That was where he felt closest to his private view of heaven. Okay, picture of the dump. You might want to pause to have a look, make some notes in your chart. The dump stretched over acres of drifting sand that arced like a yellow moon about the warehouses and factories and smoke-belching chimneys of the city. The place was littered with the offscourings of a careless people. But to Tristan, each barbed and jagged coil of rusted wire was a chain of gold, each shard of splintered glass a diamond, each oozing slick of oil a rainbowed vein of fresh-cut opal. From this treasure trove he gathered the sad and broken objects he would take back to his room and store in the shadowy recesses of his dresser, or on the top of his wardrobe, or beneath his bed, until such time as his curiosity led him to look at them again, to pick them up and examine them. Finally, he would take them apart, determined to discover what had made them tick or whir or ring. And when he had restored them, his fingers deft and skilful, his eyesight sharp and focused, he would place them on his desk and sit back, filled with wonder at the smooth and secret workings of the life inside. The world of levers and springs and cogs and gears, ticking, beating, throbbing, pulsing, an inner world that he could not see. One Sunday afternoon, as Tristan was scavenging in the dump, he caught sight of a curious box among the rubbish, a box fashioned from dark wood and burnished metal. Its lid was covered in marks and scratches, which might have been names or nothing more than ancient graffiti. The lid of the box was hinged and latched, but the latch was held fast by a lock which he could not prise open, at least not there at the dump, with the daylight fading. So he carried the box home, intent on discovering what secrets, what strange and wondrous objects might be locked inside. That night, after dinner, he removed the box from beneath his bed and placed it on his desk. He took a length of wire and a screwdriver and a fine silver jeweller's instrument and triggered the lock. It sprang open with a sudden snap, and he lifted the lid. He was struck by the musty odour of entombed air which crept from the dark space within to fill his room, to seep into his lungs. And then we have the box. Strange markings. Pause it, have a good look. Inside the box was crammed with treasures, each more intriguing than the last, yet all were aids to sight, aids to seeing further, or more closely, or more clearly. Tristan's pulse raced, his heart beat faster, and his eyes glistened with delight at the promise these wonders held. What attracted him most was an object with two eyepieces like binoculars. He thought, although they were not binoculars exactly, not in the modern sense of the word. He picked the thing up and held it to his eyes. It fitted him perfectly, as though it had been designed for his face, for the precise distance between his eyes. But he could see nothing, only two dark orbs. He looked into the box again, and there in the shadow of the corner were what appeared on first glance to be compact discs. He took them out and looked at them. There were three, each enclosed in its own protective sleeve of yellowed paper. He removed one. It was as light as a feather, yet rigid. Its dull metallic surface was cold, icy cold, cold enough to make him shiver. And there we have very sinister looking, creepy. Tristan smiled. Now he knew what this thing was. He had owned a toy, something like it when he was a child, a Viewmaster. He slipped the first disc into the machine and held it to his eyes. He pressed a lever at the side. There was a click which echoed ominously, like the sound of a lightning strike. And in an instant the darkness was gone. But what he saw was like no picture he had ever seen. Inside the machine, before his eyes, was a scene of fearful chaos, the chaos of the beginning of a world. Get the Big Bang Theory. He clicked again, and the sound of the storm was silenced. He clicked again, and again. He heard the sound of the sea, the thrash and surge of waves, and the moaning of a mighty wind. But above all, drowning all, came the chilling cry of an animal, something monstrous and beyond his knowledge, his imagining, but an animal all the same. And then, though he hardly dared look, there followed the raucous cries of human beings, or what he thought were human beings, their voices raised in anger, and so he went on until the disc was finished. Only then did he sit back, amazed and breathing deeply. It's a good one to pause on. So there's the images that he found inside the disc when you look through the view master. Like a saber-toothed tiger, dinosaurs. It's like the beginning of time, man through the ages, eye in the middle. He removed the first disc and reached for the next, inserting it with a trembling hand. He clicked again, and the mechanism whirred and snapped. The second disc came to life. It was more peculiar than the first. Now Tristan heard the grinding of stone against stone, the strain and stretch of mighty timbers, but still he looked fascinating. There followed the moaning of a wind, the slither and slide of sand, the drumming of torrential rain, and after the rain a stillness, and above the stillness the wailing of people in distress, in fear of their lives. When the disc was finished, he removed it and reached for the third. Stonehenge there. People dying, floods, vicious storms. Egypt. Very interesting. This time he clicked more slowly, watched more carefully, and the sounds that he heard caused a shiver to creep up his spine. These sounds were softer, true, yet just as haunting. He heard the slow, even rhythms of a deep and distant drum, the lilt of chanting, and the peal of a solitary bell. He heard the clash of steel upon steel, the thudding gallop of 1,000 horses, and the human cries of those who fell beneath their hoofs. These sights and sounds had made him terribly afraid. Still trembling, he took the disc out and set the viewer down on his desk. Then he crept into his bed, although he sensed, as he tried to sleep, that he was no longer alone. The next morning he slept late, waking strangely tired. It was Monday, and that meant school. He glanced across at the box and saw the discs there on his desk, as he had left them. He saw the viewer sitting upright just as he had left it. And why shouldn't it be? He wondered. Why shouldn't it be? He got up, showered and dressed, went down to the kitchen, ate breakfast and left for school. But for once, bright as he was, Tristan could not concentrate. He felt restless, eager to be at home, eager to look once again into the haunting world of the viewer. And in this picture you can see what looks like the viewer watching out at Tristan in his bedroom. The viewer's eye. There's an eye there. Like a face. Alone in his room that afternoon, Tristan did not attempt to do his homework. He picked up the viewer, inserted the first disc again, and held the machine to his eyes. He heard the slapping of the sea, the wind whistling through sails and rigging, the cries of the outcast, the imprisoned, the dying. The first disc had changed. He appeared to be a bit further on in time. So had the second. As it rotated, he heard the thump of an engine and the hiss of steam, the shudder of a machine gun, the blast of a bomb. Looks like That's World War One, World War Two, Industrial Revolution. Third disc had changed too. It was the last. But this final disc made no sound at all. From within the machine came only an eerie silence, a lifeless silence. Atomic bomb, people starving, drought. Not sure what that one is. Afraid, Tristan tried to pull the viewer from his eyes, but he could not. He tried to look away, but he could not. Something compelled him to keep looking, to try against his own wishes, his own common sense, to actually enter this machine. Or was it the machine itself which was luring him, drawing him in? Try as he might, he could not stop looking, and little by little he found himself slipping away, slipping in, losing himself to a greater power, a power which he could not resist, was not even sure he wanted to resist, provided he could know, could see, could find out more. This picture's interesting. If you look, it's got Tristan's name. Is this one of the discs, maybe? Very creepy. In the morning, when Tristan had not come down, his mother called him. There was no answer. She went to his bedroom, knocked, and went in. Tristan's bed was empty, but on his desk was a box of wood and metal, its lid closed, its latch firmly locked. There, looking out from the viewer. Which was curious, very curious indeed. Right, what you now need to do then, hopefully you have filled in some key events on that chart that you were doing. You could obviously you pause the video so you could note things down. Now finally what I'd like you to do is, what are your thoughts on that book? Okay, it was a very unusual story, quite creepy. So it's your personal response, and there's no wrong answers to this, it's just what you think. So here's some questions that I'd like you to answer. So where do you think Tristan has gone? How does this make you feel? Has the story taught you anything? How do people remember who you are? So we were like reminded of people over time there. Do you think Tristan was always meant to find the viewer? Now, it's up to you how you present your answers. You can write them down. You could record yourself. You could get somebody, a grown-up or brother, sister, to interview you, and you could record yourself. Do that. A PowerPoint. It is entirely up to you. Okay, just want your thoughts, your personal response to the book. And then obviously, you know the drill now. Upload your work to Class Dojo so we can all have a look. Okay, goodbye for now then.